this queer family time is, in the grand scheme of like the history of the planet Earth, is very small. You know, having gay dads push strollers down Park Slope like the rest of them is relatively new. And so being able to lean on that community as we build it, but I might not be able to like stomp around in heels when the baby's sleeping. You know,
I mean, felt does a lot.
put some rubber soles on it, I guess.
Yeah. Get a nice thick carpet.
Yes.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Welcome to Don't Think Twice. Vijay and Stevens is the writing and producing duo of Amrita Vijay and Andrew Stevens. Best friends, business partners, creative partners, and now, soon to be co-parents. We're currently taking a small diversion in our own story to discuss the specific and gendered aspects of our individual experiences. Last week, we got into feminism and a woman's choice to remain child-free. This time, Andrew is joined by special guest J.R. Andre for a discussion of gay fatherhood, queer family building, and how their experiences have been similar, but also very different.
We are going. We are heading into episode 8. And this week, I'm flying solo. It is me and my good friend, JR. We're here to talk about the issues of fatherhood, particularly gay fatherhood. And when Amrita and I were thinking about people to bring on the show, we automatically thought about JR. Welcome to the show, JR.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
JR is 38 years old, married to a wonderful man, Christian, works at a private school here in the city, and I think will be a nice counterbalance and a way for us to get into the conversation about being a dad, about being a gay dad, but coming from a different perspective, because your relationship is more typical in its setup. You're married to Christian, you live together in your household, and you are moving towards having children.
Yes, indeed.
Now, I was sure before we started recording not to ask you where you are in that journey, so we will catch up on that.
Cool.
But before we get there, I want to know from you, because I really don't know this. Mm-hmm. Did you always know you wanted to be a parent?
Yes. Yeah, I think it was like conversations that we had on date number 2.
That early. So you were dating proactively for people, looking proactively for people in your dating life who also wanted to have children.
Yeah.
How long have you two been together?
We met in 2017 in the summer. So it's almost 6 years.
Yeah. Date 2, you dive deep into whether or not you want to have children. And then magic happens, and then a marriage happens. And now, fast forward 6 years later, we're in this situation where you have started the process. So can you talk me through a little bit the process?
When we got serious enough to know that we were sticking around each other for a while, we were thinking about, as inherently a non-traditional family, we have many options: adoption, fostering, surrogacy, all the things. And we were pretty aligned on wanting to do the surrogacy route. And with that comes 1,000 more questions of like who and what and why. And blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's interesting, not to interrupt too much, but it's interesting that you were both aligned on the surrogacy, because as two men, there's still a lot of decisions to make about who's and what's. I
kind of wish that it were like 100 years in the future and they can like take 2 sperm cells and like stimulate one to be an egg, and then it would be fine and easy. But yeah, no, there are a lot of decisions to be made. So we kind of started talking about that a little bit, but it was really this conference that we went to that got us kind of zeroed in on specifics that we had to consider. Christian had come across this conference called the Men Having Babies Conference. Okay. They happened to be putting on their conference in New York City, Midtown, in like a hotel in Times Square. So I think by that point, we had talked about most of the general things that we were looking for, we were interested in pursuing. So the conference is designed specifically for gay men and looking to become fathers, and specifically for people interested in surrogacy. So the conference is kind of two parts, or it was actually over the course of 2 days, and they run through all of the headlines of the process. So there's the science, there's the financials, there's the legal, there's the insurance, there's the ethics. The conference was designed to very thoroughly give you a sense of the process and very honestly give you a sense of the process, how expensive it is, how long it is, how many people are involved. And even like one of the workshops was like, if you're gonna ask your best friend to be your surrogate, like here's all of the pitfalls. Like here's all the things you should consider and why it will be hard. But they were never like, so you must go through an agency or something. They just were really just giving information. There are parts of it that are like a mini convention. Like there is a room you walk into and there's all the different vendors selling their wares.
Selling what?
Like, well, insurance companies and legal agencies and the fertility clinics and the surrogacy agencies. That are just vying for your attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just tables with tablecloths and representatives.
Lot of swag.
All of that's to say is there was a convention room where you could buy your insurance. You could connect yourself with a fertility clinic.
Yeah.
You could
ask lots of questions.
Ask lots of questions.
Yeah.
And so you said this conference was focused for gay men wanting to have children via surrogacy. Mm-hmm. And how big would you say that conference was in New York?
It wasn't huge.
Okay.
Maybe like 150 people had signed up.
By your, visual, just observation,
Mm-hmm.
Who were the people who were there?
So they were people around my age. Mm-hmm. They were people who were predominantly partnered. And they were folks, I would say that, I actually ran into 2 people that I knew there. One of them was there with his partner, very much just exploring the options. Another one was like, we're doing this, and was very much committed to starting as soon as possible. Christian and I were kind of in between. We had done a bit of research. We had known a little bit of the landscape. We were now this was like gonna get us in. Going to get us the contacts to the agencies and the organizations and the people that we needed to connect with to start the process. So it's kind of a wide range of people on their journey.
In thinking about the conference, I want to ask you about the idea of access to all of this, because we've outlined how expensive the process is. And so when you were there, did you have a sense of that?
Very much so. It was a sea of obviously New York men that can afford this process. Mm-hmm. And we kind of commented on that, like, wow, it's very much perpetuating this cycle of rich, predominantly white families producing very resourced, well-kept children. And then obviously the more money, the more high-end the experience can be, right? In that room with the vendors, in the corner, in one of the corners, there were these 2 men in sharp suits who owned a fertility clinic in West Hollywood. The amount of filler in their faces was insane. And the people...
Those are embryos. They were just...
just all the leftovers. It's called stem cells, darling. It was insane. But, also when you looked at the people lining up to talk to them, it was like the people seeking a West Hollywood boutique fertility clinic like agency or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Of the people who can do this, there was, even
Mm-hmm.
a spectrum within that.
Wow, but
Yeah.
to your point, even inside this room, inside this space where people can afford it, there, you can be on the express lane.
Right.
You can do the TSA pre-check
Yes.
and skip the security line.
Yes.
And you're stuck back there waiting.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah, yeah,
You're doing
yeah.
it one at a time.
Yeah.
And you're fortunate enough to be able to do that. But
Yes.
it's an interesting thought because in my head, it's a fortunate thing that we have the medical technology and the ability to even do this process.
Mm-hmm.
And it is an unfortunate thing that access is a problem for
Right.
some people. And what is there to do about it? I don't know. I don't know if there is, an answer.
There is. I mean, the thing is, because it's all outside of us, right? Because we're not the egg donors, because we're not the surrogates, like a lot of this is external. It's outside of us. And so health insurance is not going to cover it, right? Or like if health insurance could
So
cover,
your health insurance doesn't have anything to do with anything.
I don't actually know. I don't know. Christian does a lot of the paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, I see the dynamic.
yeah, like there's apparently like, I don't know, 5 different lawyers you need. There's a lot of different people that are involved
Right.
in many different stages.
And
of
legal
the process.
paperwork to make sure that
A lot of lawyers' eyes, a lot of legal eyes on it, because there's a lot of contracts.
Yeah, I'm trying to relate that to my own experience because Amrita and I came at it from such a different direction,
Mm-hmm.
and that you saw a lot of partnered gay men in the room at this conference. It's clearly geared for them. I mean, if you're having presentations about the pitfalls of a donor egg, a person that you know, all of that. But our experience through the fertility clinic and was much different. It was very much about Amrita wanting to have a child, and I was a known donor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if I would have gone to the conference, if there would have been something that I could have drawn from it, being a person who's not in a relationship with another man.
One of the things that came out of that conference was there was a lot of like pep talking kind of for
Really?
prospective families, because we would navigate building a family that's queer in a straight world.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, here are all the questions you will get. And here's how you can approach them and answer them, anticipating a lot of the invasive questions that we would get. And they were doing a lot. I mean, there was a lot about sort of the well-being of us as a couple and a family, a future family. They did a good job talking about like the sort of ethical landscape of these processes.
Talk more about that. What do you mean?
New York is one of the last states to allow surrogacy, because something, not ideal happened a couple of years or decades ago until 2021. And they spoke about New York having the most comprehensive surrogates Bill of Rights, which was what was required to like make it legal again.
Right.
The people in the room, the people who were leading these agencies or who were talking to us, were the people who had, built that and made it so that it could be the safest possible, and that other states are kind of looking to New York to mirror their process. But then also just thinking about how do you reconcile the businessy aspect of this, the sort of means to an end, with the people that are in the process along with you. How does payment work in a way that fairly compensates the work that a person would be doing to carry this child or to donate an egg? So there was a lot of the humanizing the process and honestly just thinking about like, yes, there is risk involved, and yes, we consider this. If we have a surrogate in Texas and something goes wrong, God forbid, like, are we getting arrested? Like, are we, in New York? Like, there's a lot of unknowns. And I think they are just like 1 centimeter ahead of things. Like, they also don't know. And the landscape is changing so quickly. So there was a lot of conversations around that.
Right. Right. I thinking through it, when you use a surrogate, you have a relationship with a person, not just the job they're doing.
Right.
You have the relationship with the person for the entire time. Have you and Christian talked about what you're looking for in a surrogate? Have you thought about what kind of relationship? I know gay men who have had children this way who have maintained a very close relationship with their surrogate, and I imagine the opposite is true also. So how do you feel about that?
Can I tell you like where we are
That'd be great.
Okay, so for a little context of what I can answer, what I know. We are between, we have the embryos on ice somewhere. So we've gone through the process of selecting an egg donor. I think the word is harvesting the eggs.
Yes.
Yes. It sounds so weird. Harvesting the eggs and then and fertilizing them, having the final number of like developed and healthy and all the things. And now we're on a wait list for the surrogate. COVID really impacted that wait list. It should have been about 3 to 4 months. It is, they told us 10 to 12 months. So it's been a long wait with a lot of radio silence.
Do egg donors and surrogates also have the opportunity to ask that?
Yeah, so they
questions?
can, yes. So they list on their profile. When we were going through the egg donors' profiles, I mean, they tell you everything. I remember with my lesbian friend going through the sperm bank, like she saw a baby picture of the guy and like not very much information. I knew everything, great grandparents information,
Wow,
genetic history, education level, like of everyone in the family, pictures, interest, hobbies, all of it. And in there was, what relationship are they open to? And you can screen by whether
that.
or not you want that person to be involved or flexible or just, do the service and then that's it. That's the end of contact. For us, we want our kid to decide. So we screened it by people who would be flexible or open to a relationship. If it got there, when our kid turns 18, they can decide. But we are...
So when your kid becomes an adult,
that's when they can, like, on their own legally be like, hey, I'm going to seek out this person. We are going to be honest about their birthing journey with them. And they're like, knowing that many people were involved in bringing you into this world and blah, blah, blah. So, this egg donor has 2 kids of her own. So this child will have half siblings somewhere.
So,
yeah.
You have been provided with a list of information, and it sounds like some of it's pretty interesting and about this egg donor, and you've elected someone who is flexible to have a relationship after your child turns 18. It's interesting to me that you might know things about the egg donor that you could see in your own child. Whether it's something as simple as that your child takes up a hobby that happens to align with what this person's hobby. It could be something like that.
I mean, there were a lot of overlaps in the hobbies. She had drawn a picture of, like, I don't know, Queen Amidala or something, like some Star Wars reference, and we're like, yes, nerd, like, yes. Us too. Art, yay. Like, there was a lot of overlaps there.
Did you both have the same feelings about the choices?
Yeah. So, well, one of the levels of the choices that we had to make was about race. Christian's white, and I'm a sort of a coffee-colored, like, cafe au lait. My, Haitian background. And we had to kind of decide that played into the choices we were making. I didn't want to be in a situation where somebody mistook me for the nanny.
Mm-hmm.
So we were kind of looking at what would, in essence, look like a biracial child. This person has Haitian ancestry as well. So that was pretty cool.
Very much sounds like you and Christian were on the same page.
Yes.
And
but these all took conversations, many.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not even getting into parenting. This is just making the damn thing.
Right.
So I'll ask this question, and you
Mm-hmm.
can choose to answer it or not.
Mm-hmm.
The embryo that is made, the material comes from you or Christian?
So we have 2 sets. There were a couple of conversations about what to do from there, which ones to implant and all that.
There were feelings.
There were feelings, and I think, again, the conference kind of helped in thinking about, well, how do they measure the success of an embryo? So we're just going to do, pick the best one.
Mm-hmm.
The
hospital or the clinic was
the
going to
clinic is going to choose the best one, and for the second one, do the other, the best one from the other set. Right now, we're in the middle of conversations around, do we want to know who's got implanted first? Will we just be able to tell? And I'm still unsure. I still kind of don't want to know. I think it might be obvious. I don't know. I actually have no idea. I don't know. But then
I will say you two don't look similar.
We don't look similar. We're not boyfriend twins.
I will say that.
We don't. But there's this other person, right?
There's
so who knows?
The egg donor, yes.
Yeah, we actually Zoomed with them.
Okay. I didn't know if that was...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's totally optional.
Okay.
But we really just wanted to say thank you. So we Zoomed with them right before they went to the clinic to harvest the eggs.
Okay, so the hospital has your embryos. There's 2 sets. Mm-hmm. The hospital will elect the healthiest one. Mm-hmm. And right now the conversation is, do we or don't we know? And do we just wait till it happens and then are like, obviously this is Christian's?
I mean, and a baby changes from when it's born to an hour later to a day later. It looks totally different. So, but I think, I don't know, Christian said the day before, the doctor can be like, oh, it's going to be this,
It's interesting, you bring up the medical angle, and on first thought, I'm like, well, yeah, it would be nice to know for these medical reasons that you outlined in case there's something that is in the family. But I guess if you just are biologically born to your parents and one of them has a medical condition, it doesn't mean that you have that medical condition. It doesn't mean that so you can still say it's in the family. So for me to think so narrowly, well, you should know, because then you'll be able to say, that doesn't mean that why is that so? You could just tell your kid, heart disease runs in the family, and a doctor can check that person as they would check anyone else. Yeah. Anyway, it's just an aside, but it's an interesting notion.
Yeah.
That my first thought is that, you need to know, because, but do you?
That's literally the conversations we're having. Do you? I don't know.
So I have a couple more questions, and I think we've touched on a lot of them, but I'm just going to ask them anyways. I want to get your perspective towards parenting in the gay community. I know that the conference particularly talked about the process, and we have spent the time so far talking about the process of actually creating a child. Mm-hmm. But did the conference then move on to actually the parenting of a kid? You've
Not really. They kind of got us up to the surrogate and the birth.
And have you had conversations about questions about once the baby's in your arms? Or is it so much energy you have to expend just to actually get a baby?
A little column A, a little column B. I think there's when we actually get the surrogate and it's implanted and it's successful, we'll have 9 months to talk about all those things. I mean, I think we are very close to our families, and we have talked a lot about our upbringing. So we've had conversations, but we haven't, the way that we sat down with the list of questions that we got from the slideshow, like we haven't done that yet in terms of parenting style.
It's interesting, the conversations you've had to make the children and the conversations that have yet to be had about the child, the rearing, knowing that you and Christian know each other well, you're married, you've had conversations, but that at the same time, these have been conversations that Amrita and I have had explicitly because we aren't in a heteronormative setup. And we haven't had the conversations, we've had only functional conversations about how to have the child, but we haven't had some of the conversations that you've had in just making the child.
Mm-hmm.
In looking towards the eventuality of your beautiful children, you have a large network of friends, a large network of gay friends.
Mm-hmm.
And are there other people in your friend group who are on a similar journey? And of those people who aren't, what are their attitudes?
So I don't have, the people that I know who have kids are older. Of my friends who are my age or younger, I can't really think of any that are where we are.
Mm-hmm.
So no, we're kind of outliers in our friend group. I think knowing who we are, it's no surprise to anyone. They're all very supportive. We'll get the odd joke like, we'll never see you again, and the kid's
Right.
born and things like that. I sometimes think about like, can I leave the kid with Christian or the babysitter so I can go watch Drag Race like at the bar? Like, I don't know, we'll get there when we get there, I guess. But it is, as gay people, like our social lives are everything. That's how we make community.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do when you have to take care of a newborn?
Yeah.
How do you reconcile?
Or how do you make space?
So a straight couple friend of ours started hosting dinners every week at their place. They actually soundproofed the baby's room.
So the baby is in like a panic room.
The baby is in the panic room on lock. Like,
Yes. Fantastic.
And they host us so they can maintain a social life, and we can see the baby before they put him down.
Mm-hmm.
And we can still be our authentic selves. So there are workarounds. How do you plan on handling that? The idea of like queer community and navigating parenthood?
My community is different than yours, and I don't have the same connection to particularly a gay male community and like gay male spaces.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say though that this isn't really an important question, because it's been on my mind, and it was on my mind earlier in this conversation when you were talking about all the conversation you and Christian have had up until this point about making the baby. And I was thinking, yes, and then when the baby's here and you want to preserve your community and your space and your, who JR is, how do you thread that needle? Often gay spaces are adult spaces, and whatever version of adult that is, doesn't have to be like naked time, but our adult spaces are thought of as being not appropriate spaces, even more so than just like a regular adult bar.
Yeah. I will bring my kid to the drag show.
Uh-huh.
The brunch, maybe. The drag story hour, the pride parade. Yeah. So there are aspects of queer culture that I will be like, this is us.
And I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what's appropriate and inappropriate for a kid. I know you asked me the question, I turned it back on you, but to answer it honestly, from my perspective, I know that it will be important for me to go and have my social life independent of Amrita, independent as just Andrew. And I have a concern that I won't always honor that for myself. So I don't have like a good answer except to say that is something that's been on my mind and was on my mind when you were talking.
Well, that's very real. Maybe the silver lining is that a lot of the gaiety is at night. The kids are already sleeping, so it's easier. You can get a night nurse.
And there's one less layer for you and Christian. There's one less layer. The children will be your children, much like Amrita and I will have shared children, but you and Christian will also be a unit in a way that Amrita and I will never be the same type of unit.
But, I mean, is it that different? Like, a bunch of my students have step parents. Like, they've, unfortunately, I might venture to say that the majority of them got step parents through having to navigate a difficult time. You don't have that, right? So it's like you can honor the various people that are in your environment, in your bubble, in your space, that share feelings for you and the kid and Amrita, and not have like trauma attached to it. Yeah. And we're living in different times now.
I know it's all possible to both establish a relationship, a secure, stable home for which mom and dad will always be there. And in time that's appropriate for children's development, for them to understand that there's like something a little bit different in mom and dad's relationship. Yeah. That isn't a mystery. Mom and dad explained it, but they're not.
Right.
Oh, they don't sleep in the same. Oh, they're not like my friends down the block who sleep in the same bed. And is it important to you, or how important is it to you to have other gay families around yours?
Very important.
Why?
An affinity space is an affinity space, right? You get to not put up the armor. People won't ask you the dumb questions. Or if they're asking you the dumb questions, it's coming from a good place. It's easier to give benefit of the doubt. Shared experience. Learn from the elders, the trailblazers, the mentors in ways that I wouldn't necessarily be able to from my straight friend. Dynamics are different. Politics are different. Relationships are different. So, yeah, I mean, queerness has to come first. Like, it's its own thing. Knowing that we are part of this growing community, but also leaving leaving this legacy that people will look to us in the future when we get to pass that information and like clothing that the kid doesn't fit in anymore down. I don't know. I mean, indulge me for a second, but like, we don't get that a lot as gay men. Like, we lost a generation, especially kids our age. We actually lost a generation of mentors. So, so to be able to pick up those reins and plug into that sort of building community, is really important to me.
JR, thank you for sitting down. Fascinating to think about hurdles that you have to jump over to make your family and the ones I haven't had to. So thank you for providing a different perspective.
Yeah, thank you for the insightful questions. It's been fun to share the story.
And I can't wait to raise our kids together.
Oh my God, the play dates. How fun.
Jean-Robert Andre is an educator, dean of equity and inclusion, and all-around wonderful human being. In our next episode, we are back with our wonderful host, Marina Weiss, to have a very vulnerable conversation about sex and romance. How will these aspects of our lives fit in with our new roles as co-parents? In the meantime, we are at vjandstevens.com or at vjandstevens on Instagram.
Just be careful what daddy group you're looking to.
That's very true.
Join. Be Make sure you read the description before you show up with a stroller.
Yes.
You might get something you don't want.